All right, everyone. A very, very good evening to each and every one of you present for this live streaming session. I hope you had a great morning. I hope you had a great afternoon. Yes, the markets have concluded for today. The markets have closed for today, right? But as all of you are aware that tomorrow we have, a significant event taking place, correct? So we have the US elections, which commence from tomorrow, right? The 5th of November. So we would be expecting, quite a lot of fluctuations. Yes, definitely in the US economy, in terms of the US indices and specific sectors. But yes, there would be repercussions of it in the Indian share market as well, particularly certain sectors which are highly dependent on the US consumers, correct? So, a very good evening once again. I can see Sophia in the house. Hello, Sophia. I hope you had a great day, and I hope you're having a great evening as well, right? Please make sure that whatever is necessary for, making sure to go through this particular live streaming session, whether it is your water bottle, whether you require coffee, tea, whether you want to make notes, correct? Whether you need your notebook or your pen, paper, whatever is required, please make sure everything is around you, everything is accessible to you, so you do not have to move anywhere or get distracted. All right, I hope everyone is, yes, the day has finished, the trading day has finished, but Harsh's live streaming session has not finished yet, correct? So this is the third live streaming session for today being the 4th of November, today being Monday, the start of the week, right? So as you have seen today, the bearish market sentiment has been prevailing in the Indian economy, right? With a lot of uncertainties going on. Sophia is asking, do you have any expectations for the outcome of tomorrow's US presidential election? And who do you lean towards? Yes, Sophia, I get your question. It's very interesting. And yes, I do have certain expectations for tomorrow. And in terms of me leaning towards Mr. Trump or Mrs. Harris, you will get to know, right? I mean, come on, the live streaming session has just begun. Do not worry. Like I always say, when Harsh is here, there is nothing to fear, right? When Harsh is here, there is nothing to fear. Now, quick introduction about the one and only Harsh. I have 8 years of experience trading the financial markets, correct? 8 years. That's quite a lot of time. I mainly focus or I mainly specialize in trading the forex products, correct? Such as euro dollar, pound dollar, and the list goes on. I even trade commodities such as oil, gold, silver, as well as the US indices, correct? The S&P 500, Dow Jones, the Nasdaq 100. I am more of a technical trader, correct? So I specialize in technical analysis, which have various aspects such as supply demand, trend flow, price action, Fibonacci retracement trading, so on and so forth. The list is endless. The list is quite exhaustive, right? So here at Dolphin Markets, our main purpose, our main motive behind conducting these live trading sessions is to provide you beautiful people with valuable information, correct? Information in terms of analysis, information in terms of providing you trading opportunities, aka hot stocks, and third but not the least, in terms of providing you trading education, correct? Education pertaining to technical analysis, right? Our third session generally is marked, or it's focused more towards technical analysis, education. But with the elections just around the corner, right? Tomorrow, the 5th of November is when the US elections will commence, correct? So we are going to focus more on what the US elections hold for the Indian stock market, all right? Sophia is writing there will be significant market movements for gold tomorrow in the stock market. Yes, Sophia, that is absolutely true because the gold market has been, appreciating in value for the last couple of months. Gold has almost hit a high of around 2,800. We will look at the charts to, get a bigger, a clearer perspective. But yes, Sophia, you are correct. Now, with the stiff competition between Mr. Trump and Mrs. Kamala Harris, with neck to neck competition, right? In one phase, Trump is leading by 1 or 2%. In the other phase, Kamala Harris is leading by 1 to 2%. So there's so much of competition between the two that it gets even more skeptical. It gets even more indecisive in terms of who will win. For instance, if there was a certain scenario where X or Y, I don't want to name anyone, but for example, if X was leading Y by 10%, 20%, 30%, there is a clear margin as to who might be winning. But with the current US elections, which are going to take place tomorrow, there is neck to neck competition. So there is, a lot of anticipation as to who will enter the markets, correct? Who will win the elections. So with a lot of anticipation comes a lot of volatility, right? Because people have two options, either to go with Mr. Trump or go with Kamala Harris. So now who wins will dictate the picture. Sophia also writes, I dare not enter the gold markets today. Very important, Sophia. Remember, the markets have closed for the Indian share market. Yes, I agree, the gold markets are up and running, but with the anticipation of what holds for us tomorrow in terms of the elections, there is going to be a lot of fluctuations, a lot of volatility. I'm even aware about other brokers currently who are reducing their leverage, who are increasing the margin required to trade because of the uncertainty that tomorrow might take place. Sophia also writes, I'm afraid of a black swan event tomorrow in the stock market. Well, Sophia, I'm not sure about a black swan event because black swan events are generally those events which are not planned for, correct? So, like the Swiss crash or the Lehman Brothers, on which led to the recession in the US. These were black swan events because they were not clearly known. But unlike the black swan event, the US presidential elections have a solid foundation on or a solid work plan on the basis of which the entire process is carried out. So nonetheless, it won't be a black swan event, but yes, definitely there will be a lot of whipsaws or fluctuations taking place in the market. All right, quickly, again, I want to reiterate and focus that our entire motive of having these live trading sessions is for you, beautiful people, to understand the power that we bring to the table. Remember, I personally am, making sure that I'm providing you three live trading sessions for. So, in the first and the second live streaming session, when the market is up and running, we are making sure to provide you with trading opportunities, correct? Hot stocks that can make you money. So this is a clear and consistent way of showcasing our beautiful community that yes, it is possible to make consistent returns in the market irrespective of whether the index is bullish or bearish, whether the economy is bullish or bearish. All right. So it's very important to keep, reminding that it's not one or two trades that we have taken. It has been more than 27 trades that have been taken and closed with a profitability of 97%, right? Yes, we do have trades that are running. And yes, as in how the markets are improvising because the markets are dynamic, right? That is when we will decide to, take further positions or make the necessary adjustments. So I hope people understand the importance of why we are holding these live trading sessions. All right. Now, as you can read from today's title, with the anticipation of US elections tomorrow, what will be the impact on the Indian stock market? So, quickly, let us start with the basis of what exactly are we, looking for. Yes, Sophia, there's going to be a lot of fluctuations, a lot of volatility. I'm not sure of a black swan event, but definitely there will be significant movement, right, in the share market. Now, as you can see, first and foremost, we are very clear with who are the main two contestants, right? We have Mr. Donald Trump from the Republican Party, and we have Mrs. Kamala Harris from the Democratic Party. All right, so these two candidates are fighting neck to neck to gain the power over who is going to be the president of the United States of America, right? So the elections will commence from tomorrow. All right. Now, as you are aware that both the candidates have their own ideologies. Both the candidates who come from their respective parties have certain ideologies based on which they would be implementing certain policies. Correct. Now, India as such will not be directly impacted by the news or by the fluctuations in the in the U.S. elections, but there are certain sectors which will be directly affected because their major consumption of their goods or products and services comes from the people who are residing in the United States of America. Correct. So those sectors have to be taken into consideration. Will the entire economy be affected? No. There might be, knee jerk reactions based on the election results, but in the mid to long term, as such, because India is an independent country and is not connected to US in any direct manner, so there will not be any major implications. But certain sectors which we are going to discuss now will be having significant impact, correct? So the first and foremost sector is definitely going to be the IT sector. I hope people can see, correct? So the IT sector definitely, because a lot of emphasis of IT companies in India, their revenue, majority, almost around 35 to 45% of the company's revenue is generated by consumption in of people in the United States, correct? So IT is going to be one sector that we have to be focused on. Pharmaceuticals is another sector that we will be focusing on. Similarly, we have industrials, oil and gas, and defense. So one, two, three, four, five. Overall, around five sectors are going to have more significant impact compared to all the other sectors. And in general, the economy will have maybe very instantaneous knee-jerk reactions based on the US election results, but will not have any significant long-term repercussions. All right, I hope that is clear. I hope people are able to understand. Oh yes, we even have metals and utilities, so that gets the total number of sectors from 5 to 7. All right. Now, it's very important to understand, because they come with their own set of ideologies, they come with their own set of, plan of actions that they have to, conquer and project in the economy. We are going to focus on those. All right. Now, a quick, a recap of how it had translated when, Mr. Trump had won. For example, let us read this. A Trump win in November 2024. Now, this is what analysts are predicting, all right, is likely to benefit Indian auto, energy, metal sectors while being neutral for the pharmaceutical space. So, we will understand more in detail, but the overall consensus is it should be beneficial to the auto, energy, and metal sectors, while pharma might be on a neutral path. Um, then we have. The IT sector, we will look at it more in detail. Now let's look at this particular graph, table, sorry. All right, I hope people can see my screen, correct? All right, cool. Now in terms of Harris versus Trump, right? This is just a speculative table column which is depicting, what would be the policies and how will it be taken care if Miss Harris comes into power, or if Mr. Trump comes into power. All right, in terms of trade policy. So, if we have a speculation that Mrs. Harris is going to win, she's going to be targeting tariffs on China, right? So China is currently on their is on their hot list and is on their priority list when it comes to trade policy, right? In terms of because China has a superpower when it comes to trade dominance across the world, and that is where US is feeling the heat in its own manufacturing sector, and will do whatever is required to increase its impact and reduce the other country's impact. In terms of fiscal policy, in terms of Harris, high green and social spending, while Trump is going to be more on defense, correct? Then we have budget deficit, upward impact. So both have a positive impact towards the budget deficit, and we will even look at how Trump's party, as well as Mrs. Harris's party, right, the Democratic Party, in the past, how the markets have reacted to whichever candidate has come into power. The general consensus in the markets has always been bullish, but the rate at which the rates at which the markets have moved in their respective tenures, we are going to discuss more about it. All right. Then we have GDP and employment growth. Negative impact from tax hikes on corporations and negative impact from retaliation. So plus or minus the similar outlook. Inflation, Fed rate policy. Now, Fed rate policy is quite important because it all boils down to how much you are either willing to reduce the rates in order to promote, foster businesses, or to increase rate to curb inflation, right? So, in terms of Fed rate policy, more rate cuts are, are speculated in the year 2025 under the Harris administration, right? And if Trump comes into power, there might be a possibility for for the Fed rates to be paused, right, during the course of 2025. So these are certain points which are of high importance, all right? How both the parties, how their ideologies towards policy making will be impacted based on these certain, this is just a generalized outlook as to what you can expect if either party A wins, either the Republican Party wins or the Democratic Party wins. All right. Now, in terms of market performance, remember, as you can see, this particular graph, both for the Trump administration, we are going to consider Biden administration because this is the data that is based on history, on historical past. All right. But nonetheless, the parties remain the same. It's the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party. And as you can see, for the Dow Jones, S&P, Nasdaq, for the American indices as well, there has been bullish movement throughout the tenure of the presidential cycle. But focusing on the Indian share market, focusing on the Nifty and Sensex, in terms of when Trump was in power, we had a 73.6% appreciation, right, compared to a 64.5 when Mr. Biden was in power. Similarly, on Sensex, when Mr. Trump was in power, the market rose by around 82, right? The price appreciated by 82.3%, while during Biden's administration, during the Democratic Party's rule, the Sensex had appreciated only by 59. Did the market continue in a bullish trajectory for both the parties when they were in power? Yes, but the percentage in terms of which party was responsible for further, appreciation of the prices or the indices was majorly focused on Trump. So now you start to get a clearer perspective as to who is more business minded when it comes to and who is more towards the general welfare. All right, so both of the parties have their strengths, and those strengths are based on which they are conducting their rallies all across the United States of America to decide, to let the public decide, who should be the next president of the United States of America. All right, a quick look at the different sectors that we had focused previously, right? I told you about IT sector. I told you about the metal sector. I told you about manufacture, the industrial sector. I told you about pharmaceutical sector. So certain and the defense sector as well. So these sectors we will try to analyze and outlook how a particular win by a particular party might affect, right? In terms of the IT sector, I hope people can see my mouse, right? I hope people are not sleeping. I hope everyone is listening to what I'm sharing. All this information, I'm trying to do my best to connect as many dots as possible. First, we are going to cover, the basic thesis, right? The knowledge behind what are the ideologies and how are, the possible policies that might be implemented if a particular party wins. And then we will try to understand it, how it's getting affected on the Indian share market, which sectors are getting affected, and what are the pros and cons of, certain policies being implemented that can affect a particular sector. Then we will come to the charts and we will try to analyze and see from a technical perspective how the markets, might be reacting. As we say in technical analysis, price is king, and price discounts everything in terms of all the news events, all the speculations, all the opinions that are generated by investors and traders are spotted on the chart. So we will look at the charts also and then have a clearer look. Now, coming back to the IT sector, in terms of the IT sector, if Mr. Trump wins, it's going to have harsh. All right. Now, this is not harsh, but this is harsh, like severe, bad impacts given his anti-immigration stance. Right. We all are aware of Trump and his anti-immigration stance. He prioritizes Americans living in America before any other ethnicity, who might come to America to work. So that is his, that has always been, he has been very clear and steadfast when it comes to, implementing anti-immigration stances. And he's very clear in that, right? A biggest example has been the U.S. Mexican wall. I mean, which he has spent millions of dollars to build, right? And if Mrs. Harris wins, it is not applicable because she does not have any kind of stance, anti-immigration stance as per Mr. Donald Trump. So the IT sector will not be much, affected. On the contrary, when Mr. Biden was in charge, right, when the Democratic Party was in charge, the market had been in a bullish trajectory for the IT sector, correct? But when Mr. Trump had won, because of his anti-immigration policies and rules, the IT sector had been affected quite substantially because the revenue that the IT sector generates comes majorly from the US consumers, correct? Then, when we look at the auto sector, focus on local manufacturing, infra spread could revive the Class 8 trucks, Bharat Forge, RK Forgings may gain. So, there is a possibility or an analysis that is, focusing more on appreciation, in having a bullish sentiment for the auto sector. While for Mrs. Harris, it's still not applicable because, on the contrary, they are focused more on renewable energy. So now, how those things will come into play, we will have to look. But in terms of auto under Trump administration, we still have a bullish sentiment. When it comes to metals, spending may boost metal companies' fortunes, right? With more focus on business, more focus on development, definitely the metal sector, because every industry that is being used for creating, for infrastructure or for development requires metals. So definitely, there will be a boost when we are looking at it from a point of Trump's administration. While for Mrs. Harris, it's not applicable. Energy. Hard stance on EVs may boost oil and gas production, positive for metals and pipe companies. While for Harris, it is focused on renewable. Right? I was telling, Trump still believes in using fossil fuels to maintain the consumption of energy in today's thriving economy, right? But Mrs. Harris, she is focusing more on renewable energy, right? Better energy for the future. Pharma is unlikely to be very favorable for general Indian generics, but it is not likely to be detrimental to Indian pharma. So pharmacy is still on the sidelines. Not much can be expected in pharma. Then defense. Both Harris and Trump are expected to focus the Indo-Pacific region, right? So when it comes to defense, whether that is Mr. Trump or Mrs. Harris, there will still be a potential boost for the defense sector, correct? So these are certain points that we have covered in terms of understanding, yeah, which are the sectors mostly going to be affected. And again, they all go as per sequence. So it's always going to be the IT, the information technology sector that will be affected the most, or that is expected to be affected the most. All right. Now, I hope people are understanding, people are able to connect the dots, how we try to connect, Remember one thing, during the tenure of both the parties, the overall index, right? Whether it was for the US or whether it was for India, whether it was S&P, Dow Jones, Nasdaq for the US indices, or whether it was Sensex and Nifty for the English share market, the markets have been in a bullish momentum during both the tenures. But the rate at which the market had been bullish was significantly higher during Trump's administration than it was during Biden's administration, right? So that is one point to keep in mind. And in terms of sectors, as we had covered, major focus will be on the fluctuation that can happen in the IT sector. Now, this is again what we had discussed in terms of how the prices had moved, 1 month before, 1 week before, 1 week after, and 1 month after. So the short term perspective, and we have a long term perspective, right? So just looking at the last two, right? 2016 and 2020, right? 2016 is when Mr. Trump had won, 2020 is when Mr. Biden had won. So, and remember, Kamala Harris is from Mr. Biden's party itself, right? The Democratic Party. So in terms of movement of price, when Trump was in power, the prices had, slightly in the short term had fallen. And in terms of Trump, in terms of Biden, when the Democratic Party had come into power, the value of, the Sensex had increased, right? So again, this also gives you another angle in terms of, who might be beneficial. Remember, we talked about the particular sectors, which might be affected. Now we are just looking at it from a generalized perspective as to what will the impact of Sensex be during, the particular tenure, or what, based on the significant event we are going to have tomorrow. Again, based on the overall Sensex, we are not talking of one sector. We are talking of an overall index, right, of an economy. So, based on the statistics shown, it is when Trump was into power, there was a shortfall, right, a slight bearish for this, for that short term. Remember, it's only a month worth of data, right? We are not comparing the entire 4 years. But while when the Democratic Party was in power, there was, an increase in prices of Sensex. Now, this was another thing that we had also discussed, but it's important to understand, right? With all the uncertainty going on, with a lot of people being uncertain or skeptical as to what tomorrow might hold. So, yes, Sophia, you were right. A lot of people are focusing on, gold. Let us quickly just have a look on gold before we continue with the articles. 1 second. Now, in terms of gold, as you could see, almost touching 2,800, right? So prices of gold have definitely been at an all-time high, right? But with prices being at an all-time high, the prices have been expensive, have been quite expensive. So when coming back to the web page, right? During times of uncertainty, correct? The pressure on gold, because people do want to focus more where people are certain that they feel safe, and gold has always been one. Now, whether it was under Trump's administration or Mr. Biden, whether it was under the Republican Party's administration or Democratic Party's administration, the prices of gold have generally skyrocketed. Now, when we look at certain movements of price, right? The amount, the information that I shared at the beginning of this particular web page was that during Trump's rule, during Trump's regime, prices had corrected, right? They had a slight bearish significance. When Mr. Biden had come into power, there was bullish significance. So that is exactly what we're trying to connect as many dots as possible. If Mr. Trump wins, the possibility of markets reacting to the way the markets had reacted back in the year 2016 will be preferable, correct? In terms of when Mr. Biden, who's from the Democratic, had won, and there was a bullish sentiment. So if Mrs. Harris wins, the trajectory for prices to be again continuing in the bullish movement is also probable, correct? Sophia is writing the manufacturing sector performed well today. Is there any news behind it? We will try to look at it, Sophia. Yes, the only sector that has performed uh, slightly better than the overall index. Remember, technically speaking, all the sectors have performed, have underperformed. But yes, there have been a couple of companies, especially like the ones that we have been focusing on, right? I hope people have not forgotten. We had discussed this right before in the previous live streaming session, and that was regarding IP rings, right? So IP rings has been a manufacture. It comes under the manufacturing sector, and this company has been performing quite significantly for people who have taken the trades. I mean, I should say yes, the markets are closed, but we are just trying to make you aware that the prices have moved by almost 7.8%, right? 7.8%, and this trade was shared to you on 30th of October. So in a span of 2 to 3 working days, people are already sitting at a huge profitability, right? Yes, Sophia, we will try to look at the details more. But first, since we have the US elections tomorrow, we are trying to focus mainly on the US elections, all right? So coming back to the U.S. elections, now we had shared certain points, right? Whether it was economy, trade, China, like how Democratic parties are first, they're focused on uplifting the welfare, right, of their citizens by reducing the grocery rates, giving better deals on mortgages, housing, loans, and those things. While Trump is more business minded, right? Business minded in terms of we Americans need to flourish business wise. We want our businesses to sustain and increase our exports. So that have been the ideologies for both the parties, right? And these are certain other points which we have talked about: energy, defense, immigration, and how it's going to affect, correct? And there was one more thing that I wanted to show you. Oh, yes, it's going to be this one, right? Very important. We did have a brief understanding of how Sensex had performed, right? Quickly, just let me show you the same details, right? When Sensex had performed, one second, where is it? When Sensex had performed 1 month before, 1 month after, 1 month before, 1 week before, 1 week after, during the 10 years. So a similar movement, right? How Sensex had performed. Like I had mentioned, the Sensex had underperformed during that 10 year under Trump administration, and during Biden's administration, it had, slightly overperformed, right? Now, this is the graphical representation when in terms of how the rupee was affected against the dollar. Remember, we have just covered certain sectors and their influence or the factors that might impact, but we didn't talk about rupee, the currency behind, right? Rupee against the dollar, right? So during the tenure of Trump, I hope people can see my mouse, correct? During the tenure of Trump, when he had won in 8th of November 2016, the rupee had depreciated. I hope people can see this, right? So the value of rupee had fallen almost from 68 to almost 62, right? And during Biden's, Democratic Party's rule, the prices had corrected, but overall they had turned bullish, right? Nonetheless, during both the parties, whenever people have in the year 2016 and 2020, whenever a party has come into power, there has initially been a correction for the rupee, followed by rupee appreciating later. But for both the parties there has been corrections, correct? And now in terms of other news events, okay, so we are done with the theory part. Let us come and look at the charts, right? So quickly, overall nifty, right? People have been quite bearish, right, or skeptical, right, when it comes to why the markets are performing such. There is a very important point to keep in mind that all the sectors apparently have underperformed, right? A few companies have performed well, but overall in general Let me just copy paste the data and we will quickly have a look at all. Right? Give me a minute. So I hope people are learning something. I hope I'm providing you with some important information. All right. Now, quick read. Remember, the Nifty and index have ended in negative territory, right? And on the BSE, we have almost, price has depreciated by almost 1.18%, right? While on the Nifty, price has depreciated by 1.27. So 42 out of 50 constituent companies on the Nifty have been underperforming, right? Majorly dragged by some auto companies and some infrastructure companies as well. While Mahindra and Mahindra Tech, Cipla, these are tech companies as well as auto companies. So it's not the sector, it is the company that has been overperforming, all right? While Dr. Reddy, a pharmaceutical based company, were managed to end in green with a 2.14 appreciation. The fear index, right? The volatility index. I hope people understand what a volatility index is. If a volatility index increases, that signifies that there is more fear in the economy, right? There is more uncertainty in the economy. So the fear index, India's VIX volatility index, which measures the volatility in the markets, ended higher by 5%, right? An increase in 5%. So, and all the other sectors have also ended in red. All the sectoral indices ended in red, not one, all. Okay, so Sophia, there is a small correction for you. It is not the manufacturing sector that has performed, but it is there are specific particular companies inside the manufacturing sector which have done quite substantial. So there could be certain reasons. We will try to look into it. It could be based on the report earnings, or but we will have a look. All right. So please understand that it is not the manufacturing sector that has overperformed. It is the company in that particular sector based on its reports or optimism, or based on projections that it is working towards, that it is performing. All the sectoral indices, right? I hope people are able to read this clearly. All the sectoral indices ended in red on Monday, right? All OMCs, realty, media, they fell by two. Then they were followed by financials, FMCG, metal, private banks, consumer durables, all ending by over 1%. So technically, today has been a very bearish day for the Indian markets in terms of the FIIs and the DIIs, right? They still have been, quite it's been quite a while since I've seen the DIIs even pulling out funds, right? Or closing positions. Yes, the FIs since the last month have been, pulling out funds from the Indian economy. But today has been more or less astonishing for me as well, where the DIIs have gone in negative territory, as in rather than, putting more funds, putting more liquidity into the markets, they have dragged out a little portion, with both of them being depreciated, right? The FIs were pulling out funds, so the value has been, entering negative territories, but the DII, the domestic institutional investors as well, have pulled out funds. So that is quite, surprising, but nonetheless, the markets are going to do what they are supposed to do, right? In terms of how the markets have moved, how the sectors will be affected. Remember, till now we were focusing on just understanding a quick look at how the markets are and what sectors, but which sectors are going to get affected. That is the main concern, right? Now, whether we are going to start looking at sectors which are not related to or not majorly connected to any to the US based politics, there is no use in looking them. They will be doing what they are doing. But with the news event arising tomorrow, we have to make sure that how we can understand and how we can connect the dots for those sectors which have a much higher probable of having huge fluctuations. Remember, even during the previous past US elections, these are the sectors which have had the highest amount of fluctuations. All right. So I hope people are able to understand, right? I'm talking about these certain sectors over here: the IT, auto, metals, energy, pharma, and defense, right? So these sectors have been the sectors which have been hugely impacted, right, because of their dependence of generating revenue from the citizens, from people living in United States of America. All right. I hope. Let us look at the IT sector again. Now, in terms of the IT sector, we are going to look at the Nifty IT index, right? In terms of the Nifty IT index, as I had mentioned it to you again, the prices have fallen quite substantially. Now, remember, when we look at charts, the price that is shown to you on the charts has taken into consideration all the opinions, all the judgments, all the, the thought processes of what investors are thinking or doing, right? So with the current fall, as you can see right now in the IT index, that just shows that yes, there is skepticism in the markets, especially in the IT index, right? We will look at some big prominent companies such as Infosys, KCS, those companies have been also, quite have been underperforming for the last for the last week, right? Is that due to the anticipation of what people are going to expect? Remember, there's one thing that I wanted to show you, and that was this: the sentiment when it comes to the Indian markets with tomorrow's significant event taking place, rather than looking at the bullish percentage or the bearish percentage, it is the neutral percentage that has got me quite astonished, because yes, the markets have been bearish, so there is a significant amount of bearish sentiment. But when I look at the neutral, almost same 43%. So it is not that the economy is bearish. It is just that people currently are uncertain as to what might affect the markets. Till now, the markets have been, have been doing what they have to do. When it comes to, remember, the world is, dynamic. It is improvising as and how time progresses. So just because a particular party has won in the past and the markets, showed a particular pattern, that does not guarantee that the markets will perform the same always, right? There are many factors that have to be taken into consideration. There are geopolitical factors that have to be taken into consideration. The macroeconomic factors, microeconomic factors, world politic factors. There are so many. Every country out there needs to maintain a strategic alliance with other countries with whom it can gel, correct? So with a lot of uncertainty, I wouldn't call it as skepticism, but I would call it as uncertainty. There is a very huge chunk, almost 43%, almost, not just almost, as equal to the bearish sentiment. So it's not all of them have been bearish, but a huge chunk, right? Almost an equal chunk of sentiment is being based on being neutral. Neutral meaning based on the sidelines. We do not know whether it's going to be bullish or bearish, but what we know is that it's better to be, waiting and let the markets do what it has to do. So this has been something of significance, right? When I was like, it's not bearish that the Nifty is falling. It's just because of the uncertainty that currently the FIIs are not willing to inject the economy with funds, and the DIIs have also been, at least since Friday, they have started to stand on the sideline because maybe they might be wanting this particular phase, to get carried away with who wins the US elections, and maybe then they will take, certain strong decisions. But nonetheless, with the US elections happening tomorrow on the 5th of November, we do expect, with the current trajectory of prices going, we expect a bearish pressure, at least based from a technical perspective and as well as connecting the dots, right? Who is the one who has come into power in the past and has led to a depreciation of prices in the IT index? I'm pretty sure you all know, right? So, with the markets showcasing a similar trajectory, there is a possibility, right? There are analysts out there who have already started to confirm who might be winning, whether Mr. T wins, Mr. Trump wins, or Mrs. H. Mrs. Harris wins, right? So the battle between T and H is so significant that people are skeptical. It's not a competition where some party is winning by a mile. It is a current scenario taking place where they both are almost at equal levels, and it is getting quite uncertain as to who might win, right? Now, looking at the IT index, there is a bearish sentiment coming into play, and with this bearish sentiment, there is a probability that Mr. Clean might be in the lead, right? But we never know. Remember, elections are such where things can flip in a matter of hours, right? I still remember when I was glued to the screen, when I was watching when Mr. Trump and the other contender, I cannot remember her name, Mrs. Clinton, right? So Mr. Trump versus Mrs. Clinton. Mrs. Clinton was leading the polls, right? It was only in the last couple of hours that Trump, the voting for Trump had appreciated drastically, and that made him win. So anything can happen, right, during the elections. We do not know for certain. We can only be certain once the results are out, right? So we did talk about the IT sector, right, and its implications. Let us look for the auto sector. All right. Let me check if there is an auto sector. So we have an auto index, right? Now, based on the auto index, remember, we're just trying to get a generalized perspective as to, sorry, as to what could be the motive, the medium behind the movement of certain prices in that particular sector. Right now, as you could see, there is quite a lot of bearishness in the auto sector. Yes, prices had were bullish, but currently there has been a good amount of correction that has taken place, correct? So the correction has been significant. So just based on the auto sector, it kind of gets quite tricky. Now with Sophia asking, like, the manufacturing sector has performed well today, but is there any news behind it? See, Sophia, similarly, if you're looking at the auto index, right? The auto index is nothing but the index of the top performing auto companies in India, right? Just because the index is bearish, right? Not all the companies are going to be bearish as well, right? The most prominent example is going to be Mahindra, right? So we have Mahindra and Mahindra Limited. You can see, with the current index falling, with the current auto index falling, the prices of Mahindra are still skyrocketing, right? So it's not just about the index, but it's about a particular company. We do not have a manufacturing index. Let me check if we have a manufacturing index. Okay, we have a manufacturing index as well. So the manufacturing sector overall has not been performing quite well, Sophia. See, even the manufacturing index, right? The Nifty India manufacturing index has still been on the bearish side, right? But with the trade idea that we had shared, right, based on fundamental and technical analysis, we can see that the company IP rings, right, which is basically which is basically engaging in the provision of manufacture of auto components. So this particular, remember, the auto sector has been doing quite I mean, quite optimal compared to the other sectors, with Mahindra and Mahindra doing quite well and leading the pack in terms of bullish company. So with the manufacturing index still bearish, we do have certain companies which have shown incredible performance, right? So yes, it is the particular company that is doing well and not the sector, right? I just showed you the Nifty manufacturing index has not been performing the way we have expected. All the sectors right now, in currently as of today, have underperformed, right? A lot of focus is being put on tomorrow. We talked about how uncertainty makes people indecisive, right? Yes, now people might say that during fluctuations, there is opportunity to make a lot of money, but please understand, we are traders. We do not want to trade. We do not want to gamble. Remember, with huge fluctuations come in huge risk associated with those fluctuations. we have tried to maintain and showcase you that, consistently over time. All right. And we are not just talking of one, two trades over a span of 1 or 2 days. Consistently over the last 2 months, over a span of around 27, you know, 27 trade ideas that we have been given. That is how, by booking and squaring our positions, we have been able to attain. It's not like we are saying that, elections are coming. Let's put in all our eggs in one basket and let's, double or triple click on. Those kind of become, skeptical, because people have to understand trading is based on probabilities. Trading is not based on certainties. Please understand that, right? So yes, we want to do our due diligence. We are not telling that we are not going to do anything, but we just have to be clear and precise, in terms of, are we able to connect the dots, right? As I had showcased you, we want to make sure, okay, which sector has a probable outcome towards, a particular party winning. And has it happened in the past? Yes. So can we expect a similar reaction taking place again? Of course, yes, right? So that is how we're trying to showcase and connect the dots, right? So I hope people are able to understand. I hope I was able to add value. Let me give you a quick recap as to what we had, discussed for this particular live streaming session. It all has started with, with the elections coming tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow being the 5th of November is when the elections commence, right? So yes, the rallies have been going out, the parties have been rallying, have been conducting their, campaigns and all that. But the uncertainty still boils down as to who is going to win. And with such a stiff competition between both the parties, the uncertainty has just, has become bigger, correct? We talked about the various sectors because it's very important. Not all sectors in the Indian economy are going to be affected, but certain sectors, right? IT, pharma, industrial, oil and gas, and defense, right? So, especially major focus is given on IT, right? We talked about how Trump has had his anti immigration stance, right? He had enacted on certain policies that were against immigration interests, right? And that has had significant impact, on companies that rely on revenue being generated from America, correct? So it's mainly the IT sector. Auto sector could see a bullish sentiment based on, reviving certain trucks, which might overall, directly or indirectly revive or lead to a bullish sentiment in the auto sector. Then we talked about metals, energy, pharma, likely or unlikely might have a neutral stance, and defense, or looking at it from a bullish sentiment in terms of, USA having strategic alliances with India, so making sure, in terms of being top in terms of its, defense infrastructure and spending. Then we did look at, what had happened in the past in terms of certain price movements, when it was comparing, looking at the Sensex as an example. During the Trump administration, there was, a bearish sentiment in Nifty, whether it was 1 month before, 1 week before, or 1 month after, 1 week after. The sentiment was bearish during the Trump reign of Trump, while when Mr. Biden had come, who's from the Democratic Party, there was a bullish sentiment. So that just shows that in the past, if the prices have moved in a particular fashion, there can be a potential for prices to repeat the pattern, right? For whoever, whichever party wins, right? Then we had talked about, how there has been a huge influx of people running into gold, right? Gold being a safe haven. Gold is one of the best assets when it comes to, you know putting your funds in a product that, has value, that has been appreciated over time, right? So we did talk about how there has been a huge influx in gold. And yes, Sophia, I dare do not enter gold market today. Remember, the markets might be a little stable today, but tomorrow you might expect huge fluctuations. So it's better to be safe than sorry, right? I hope you get the point. And then we did cover upon how the market, the Nifty, has performed during the tenure of Mr. Trump and during the tenure of Mr. Biden, right? So there has been an inverse relationship between SMP during the tenure of Trump, and there has been a positive correlation during the tenure of Biden, right? So this is what we can connect. This is how we connect the dots to analyze and explain. Yes, during Trump's tenure, when he was the president, yes, the index did take a toll, and a similar picture is being portrayed currently as we speak. I'm pretty sure people can see the screen and be like, yes, the structure looks pretty promising when we try to correlate with the past data, right? So a correction, with the correction upcoming, but again, since the competition between the two candidates is so fierce that it is still skeptical or uncertain to exactly identify who will be the winner, correct? But during the Democratic Party rule, the prices of Nifty have been appreciating, correct? So there has been bullish sentiment during that tenure. We did cover upon how the rupee has been, whenever any party has come into power, there has more or less, been, sorry, let's hear. There has been more or less been a correction for the rupee against the dollar before the rupee, starts to appreciate in value, right? So I hope people understand that these are certain points, these are certain factors that we have tried to connect to get an overall gist as to how educated, how informed we can be before tomorrow's significant event, right? So I hope people have got a clear understanding. We even explained in terms of how the sectors are performing, right? We talked about the Nifty IT index, which is currently quite has been bearish, right? And we had even projected in terms of what would be the possible outcome when a particular party wins, and it's very clear based on what might happen, right? If Mr. Trump wins or if Mrs. Harris wins. We did talk about even the auto sector, right? One second. Whether with the weather changing right now, you definitely need to make sure that you are taking all the possible precautions that are required, right, to avoid any kind of viral infection. So make sure you're eating well, you're eating right, and you are taking a lot of fluids, correct? We did talk about the auto sector, and I gave Sophia, a correlation as to, yes, just because the sector is performing bad doesn't mean that the individual stock, all the stocks have to perform bad. Yes, the majority of stocks are performing bad, but not all the stocks. So we try to compare the Nifty Auto Index, where it is currently bearish, to the company Mahindra, which is doing phenomenal as of today, or which had done phenomenal, right? There was a clear bullish movement. Similarly, when we try to look at the manufacturing index, right? The Nifty manufacturing index, it still has a bearish outlook, but when compared to the hot stock idea, trading strategy we are given, the market has been quite bearish, right? So I hope people have been able to connect the dots and understand that yes, we did talk about the elections at play, what factors might be, at large in terms of affecting or influencing the market conditions. But nonetheless, I hope we will have a clear idea as to, which candidate has would be winning and who would become the next president of the United States of America. All right. So hope you had a great learning session. Hope I was able to provide you with a lot of information. I was able to connect the dots and keep and I tried my best to keep this session as entertaining, as interactive, and as valuable as possible. Right. Make sure to attend all our live streaming sessions right from Monday till Friday, where I personally provide you 3 live trading sessions during the day. So I will see you tomorrow, and let's see what the US elections have for us, right? So I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day, have a great evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right, then, namaste, and see you tomorrow. Bye bye.